the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, Outdoor Oklahoma.
Oh, that ought to be good. Hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. You know, when it comes to wildlife photography, the key, most important thing that any photographer needs to do is be able to control his environment. And a backyard bird feeding station is a perfect way to do that and get some fantastic photographs. So today I've decided to get the tips from the expert, Mr. Bill Horn. Thanks for letting me come join you in your backyard.
Welcome, Todd.
Now, you've got an elaborate system set up here to be able to photograph birds in your own backyard. What's involved in setting up such a habitat or a photo set?
Well, Todd, each backyard's unique in its own right. What I've done here is utilize this stand of oak and hickory trees as sort of the centerpiece for my feeding station. I've got a variety of different types of feeders up and a variety of feed as well. We want something for everyone, really.
Okay.
Even the squirrels. We've got squirrel logs up there, and we just get a good variety of birds in.
Sure.
Secondly, we provide them with water.
Okay.
If you'll notice the bird bath there's a dripper.
Right.
Birds instinctively know that running water or dripping water is fresh water.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I have to take that down in the cold weather, and when I do that, I go to this bird bath here, which has got a heated element in the bottom of it, and comes on automatically when the temperature drops below 32 degrees.
All right, so you're providing food, water, what else?
We provide them protection from predators.
Okay.
In the form of the boxwood hedges that you see behind me. The birds can fly down underneath there if hawks come. Or they can fly back to this wisteria bush that's directly behind you. It's a very thick, dense bush, and the birds can get down underneath there and get away from cats or whatever's chasing them.
Very good. So essentially, you've created a habitat because what I heard you say is food, water, and shelter.
That's correct.
And those are the three most important ingredients to any habitat.
Exactly.
Very good. So what are some other things that you can do to attract birds to your yard?
One of the things that I do is I put up these roosting pockets. They're just woven straw. You put them up in the trees all around the property. There's these little metal hooks on the back. You can attach them to limbs or whatever. There's even one on my back porch that's only 6 feet away from my back door. Every evening I get a pair of Buick's Wrens that comes in there and spends the night. Ironically, that same pair of birds nested in there last spring and raised their young. I was able to photograph them from just a few feet away using a macro lens.
My goodness,
Doesn't get any better than that.
Fantastic. That's right, you bet. So you provide other types of nesting habitats. You provide food, water, and shelter. Now, you're probably one of the most recognized outdoor photographers in Oklahoma. You've been in literally hundreds of magazines and publications within Oklahoma and nationally as well. What do you think you could to recommend to me, just a novice, a beginner in this, in my equipment? Do you recommend that I use a certain type of camera, or what kind of tips could you give me?
Ideally, Todd, you want a camera like this that takes interchangeable lenses. Fixed lens cameras are just too limiting.
Right.
Next, you want a telephoto lens. This is a 300 millimeter. Pretty much the minimum that you're going to need. You can put a 1.4x converter on this. That gets you to 420 millimeter. And that's a good workable focal length. You can get in close that way.
All right.
Here's a handy accessory I like to use also. It's an extension tube. There's no glass in it. It fits between the lens and the camera. And what that allows you to do is to focus closer than your minimal focusing distance of the lens. You would use this, for instance, say if you were shooting headshots of ducks.
Okay. All right. Very good. Now, when it comes to your feeding stations in your yard and trying to predict a particular spot that a bird's going to land or a bird's going to be feeding so that you can, like I mentioned earlier, kind of control as much as you can when it comes to the wildlife. Do you actually use the feeder in your photography as well?
I do. I can walk out here and get within 10 or 12 feet of the feeders, and as long as I'm still and quiet, don't make any jerky moves, the birds will accept me. They'll come in. as a photographer, I want to control as many aspects of the image as I can. So ideally, I want to make images of the birds in and around the feeders, and when you don't see any of the feeders, you don't see the bird bath.
Right,
In fact, you
right.
don't see any evidence of the hand of man at all.
Right.
The way I do that is I put up, for instance, these perches against the bird bath. Now we know that the birds are going to be coming into the bird bath.
Right.
Many of them will first light on that perch for just a second or two before jumping down to drink or bathe. And it's at that moment that you want to make your image. So then if you're looking at that image later, you just see about the first 2 inches of the perch and the bird, and you don't even know that there's a bird bath 3 inches underneath it.
So the ultimate trick photography.
Yeah, yeah.
We have no idea that we're literally just a few feet from your house
Exactly.
when we look at one of your photographs.
Same thing with this feeder behind you. If you notice, there's a pole just about 18 inches away from it. And again, a lot of birds will light on that first.
Okay.
And it's just taped on. I can change out the perches, for variety there.
Right.
And the suet feeder behind me, if you noticed, I attached it to a log and at the bottom, and the woodpeckers will come and light up on the top of the feeder
Okay.
or right at the top of the log and work their way down, and that's when you photograph them. And again, all you see in the final photograph is just the log and the bird. You don't even realize there's a feeder anywhere near it.
So that's how you control as much of your environment as possible by providing little subtleties in your setup that lend itself to photography.
Exactly.
Very good. So do you ever really set goals in your photography?
I do. One of my ongoing goals is to photograph all of the 465 species of birds that occur in the state.
Oh my goodness.
So far, I'm just at about 260, so I've got a ways to go.
Oh my goodness,
But
wow.
early on, one of my goals was to photograph a male scissor-tail flycatcher, the state bird,
Right.
in flight, tail feathers behind, with an insect in its beak.
Oh man.
A couple of years ago, I found a nesting pair a couple of miles east of here, and I spent 2 mornings out there.
Right.
Probably 6 or 7 hours, took 250, 300 images, and late on the second morning, I finally got the image that I wanted.
Oh my
The
goodness.
point I'm trying to make is it takes patience and persistence. You don't
Sure.
just walk out here and make images,
Sure, you bet. Now, probably also I'm going to assume if you're going to be an effective wildlife photographer or bird photographer, you're going to need to know your birds too.
Exactly, exactly, and that takes a little while as well.
Sure.
I use birding guides like this. Sometimes I'll make an image and I don't know what it is. I don't know what kind of bird it is. I have to refer to this.
Sure.
Also, recommend a good pair of binoculars.
Okay.
Not a cheap pair. You want to spend, whatever it takes to get a nice pair of binoculars, because you can spend a lot of time out here just observing. And we get different species through here every week or so. Birds are constantly migrating.
Right.
We tend to think of bird migration as a spring and fall thing.
Yeah.
And those are peak times, but some birds are moving at all times.
Goodness. So being very good at wildlife identification, bird ID is an important aspect of wildlife photography.
Exactly, exactly. And bird identification is a hard thing to learn. Plumages change. You have winter plumages, you have breeding plumage in the spring. So not only do you have to know each bird's identity and type, you got to know what they look like at different times of the year.
That's
So,
right. Now, I'm kind of skipping around, but I noticed that you've got your cameras on tripods.
Exactly.
Is that an essential part, or is that just kind of an extra thing that
It's essential for bird photography because we're
okay.
using telephoto lenses. It's like looking through binoculars. You see a little shake there. So I
Yeah.
probably shoot from a tripod 98, 99% of the time.
Really?
The only time I wouldn't is if I'm flight shooting with a short lens like this.
So I guess one of the things to remember with your photography is don't trust yourself to be able to hold that camera still.
No.
Go ahead and use that tripod, even though you're just photographing right here in your own backyard, a mere 15, 20 feet away sometimes.
With a telephoto lens, the slightest bit of shake is going to get a bird image. So
Goodness. So do you do much to conceal your presence or to hide, or where do you
I
take
used to.
as far in your setup? Where do you take your photographs from?
I can take it from anywhere around in here. I wear drab colors, but I don't use blinds and I don't, resort to anything like that.
Really?
These birds will accept you in a feeder environment like this.
Okay.
You just need to be still and quiet.
Okay. Man, Bill, that is a lot of information. I hope I can remember all that because that's good stuff. You mind if we maybe walk around a little bit and look at some of these other things?
Sure, let's go.
Okay, all right.
A couple things I want to show you here that I've got in the yard that are interesting. One of them is this bird box right here.
Boy, this nest box looks familiar. I think I've seen it in a couple of your photographs.
Yeah, probably so. This is one of several nesting boxes we put around the property. It's for eastern bluebirds.
Okay.
They nest here every year, raise 2 to 3 broods. They're absolutely beautiful birds, fun to watch and fun to photograph. The unique thing about this nesting box is that not only is it a productive nest box in the spring, when you open it up, you can see those dowels in there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Those are perches. So that in the wintertime, this doubles as a roosting box. Birds can fly in there and get up on those perches and get out of the weather.
So not your ordinary nest box.
Right.
What else have you got?
Several things around the yard here that I want to show you. One is this wisteria bush right here. It's great cover, thick, massive. Birds can get in there and hide from predators and don't have to sweat it.
Yeah.
This is right off the backyard.
Sure.
Every spring, I trim up all the trees in the front and back, and instead of hauling those limbs off, I bring them back here and I've created this huge brush pile.
You bet.
I realize this is not for everybody, but it doesn't have to be near this large.
Right.
You can just take a small section of your yard and pile up these limbs, and literally hundreds of birds winter in here.
I bet you've
Great
got some
protection
good...
from the elements. You know, they can get away from predators, and each year it gets a little bit bigger and then it'll sink back down, but the birds absolutely love it.
And I bet you've got some good photographs.
Oh yeah, I come back here and just set up and get quiet and still, and eventually they'll come back out.
Wonderful. Another good tip.
Correct. Todd, I mentioned earlier the number of feeders I have set up here and the different types of feed. To get a little bit more specific, we have shell peanuts over here, real popular with nuthatches, titmice.
Yeah.
Fruit and berry mix here. Chickadees love that. Sparrows like it. This is a safflower and nut mix.
Right.
Lots of birds like it. And probably the most popular feed that I have is black oil sunflower seeds on that platform feeder.
You bet.
If that's the only feeder I had set up, I'd still get a ton of birds in here.
Sure.
And this is a fairly large yard as yards go, but I lived in Midwest City for 25 years and put feeders up there and got in a lot of birds there. So this is something pretty much anybody can do because different birds are attracted to a specific type of feed.
You know, actually you mentioned that in our winter bird survey that our natural resources section conducts every winter is a great way to find out that kind of information. That's in fact how our biologists find that kind of stuff out.
Very beneficial information.
And you've been a part of that in the past before.
I've done that before. It's a lot of fun.
You bet. In fact,
it's educational.
Sure.
You learn what birds are coming to your backyard.
Exactly. We mention that on the show all the time in the winter, talking about participating in the winter bird survey, and all folks need to do is either log on to wildlifedepartment.com, of course, they can find out information about it, or call our natural resources section and be a part of science.
I've used it.
You have?
It's great.
Very good.
Great resource.
Even a professional even uses our stuff. That's great. You know, speaking of the wildlife department and combining the activities or the sports of bird watching and outdoor photography, a great way to, I guess, kind of showcase your talent or showcase your what you've done is to actually enter the wildlife department's outdoor photography or readers photography showcase in our magazine.
Exactly. It's a great way for beginning photographers to get published for their first time. You know, exactly. That's what I did.
Really?
Yeah, that was one of the first places I was published. So, and it's very rewarding to see your work in print.
Sure.
So,
you bet.
that's something that a backyard setup like this lends itself well to. You use the feeder station to get the birds within photographic range, then fire away. Take lots of images.
Very good. Well, that's good advice.
You know, Todd, I used to chase birds all the time. And it's a futile exercise.
Sure.
I finally figured out it's best if I can just bring them to me.
You
A
bet.
lot of people ask me, where do I go to photograph birds?
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them in almost all cases, your backyard is the best place to photograph
Sure,
birds.
sure.
I shoot stock images for a living, and almost a third of my images come from right here in the backyard.
My goodness, you think of the money you save on gas driving all over.
Exactly.
Of course, you probably make up for that in the amount of money you spend on bird feed every year.
Let's don't talk about that.
Well, Bill, I have had a tremendous time exploring your backyard and delving into the world of a wildlife photographer and learning the tricks of the trade. Thank you so much.
It was a lot of fun. Hope you can come back.
I plan on it. Thank you.
All right.
And thanks for joining us too. We'll see you somewhere new next time in Outdoor Oklahoma.